Welcome back to Berlin, where Roccat hold a 1-0 lead going into that Game 2 against the Unicorns of Love. Roccat are on the blue side this time. Of course, they were on the blue side last time as well, so no big change for us there. What do you think Unicorns need to change, though, coming into this next game?
Mid lane matchup, which is perhaps one of the biggest criticisms, is they cannot afford to lose so much pressure in the mid lane, because we were expecting this game to be a lot like the height disparity between you and I. Unicorns would be up here, Roccat would be all the way down here.
Well, I was trying to think of what noise Unicorns make there, because I was going to do an impression of them.
Romain does a great impression.
Okay, we'll get him out here after the series and record it and put it on Twitter.
Realistically, Roccat overperforming perhaps, but doing very well at the snowballing game through the mid lane. They actually got ahead, utilized the Kha'Zix alongside the Syndra very well, and now as we head into the second draft, I want to see Roccat do the same thing again. I actually would be really interested to see Roccat having a consistent performance.
Well, we said that Unicorns of Love are the team that's slightly inconsistent. Roccat have definitely been that as well, but Freddy 122 seems to be their lucky charm as they win their first game with him on the stage. Same bands coming out from Roccat. Unicorns of Love are down the same track as well.
The only difference, no Cassio yet. Will we see a Thresh? No, it's a Kha'Zix, and I like this band now, because try and force Pridestalker onto something that doesn't have the early game impact anymore. Thresh likely to be the first pick coming through, and I wouldn't be surprised to see the Unicorns say, okay, let's go with the Cho'Gath again. The Xayah was fine, but take away, or at least think about taking away that Kalista. Okay, we're going completely different in this draft.
Okay, getting the Kalista for Samux, getting rid of the Thresh Kalista combo as well for Roccat, and the Sejuani, another tank that we all expected to see coming into patch 7.14.
Yeah, we of course saw Sejuani a few games on 7.13, prominent because of the rise of tank junglers, thanks to the changes to the Barmy Syndra early. You get good clear through the early game and great teamfight presence later. We'll keep an eye on Sejuani later on in the game as well, but for Roccat, the emphasis once again on this Syndra. Now, Jhin is available if they want it as an AD carry. May also see something like the Tristana come out for Roccat.
Tristana very high on a lot of AD carries tier lists at the moment. Scales well into the late game, has a good early burst as well. Unicorns of Love are going to lock in the Braum, Kalista Braum, such a strong combination. And you get double ice coming out from the Sejuani and the Braum.
A lot about the Freljord in this game. Braum, of course, very good at denying some of the engage that's going to come out of Roccat, and a lot of the push potential from this Tristana, but a lot about disengaging fights. And Unicorns actually taking away a disengage tool and a flex tool from Roccat. Maybe could have put Pridestalker or Phaxi on that for the Gragas, but I actually thought the Galio was a great pick, and perhaps one of Phaxi's best non-Gnar games in a very long time.
It's his second most played across the split as well, so would not be surprised at all to see him lock that in once again. It is going to be a Renekton ban from Roccat, so they've actually stuck very much to the script that they wrote in the first game.
Gnar ban here, or Chachi is going to try and play something like an Aurelia into the Gnar if it gets played. Camille is actually the ban, so not going into the player-specific setup here. Of course, Camille, one of Phaxi's most played champions as well, one of his more successful. LeBlanc may be the takeaway here if Roccat want to follow suit with the first game.
Yeah, sticking very much to the script that they have written, and it worked out well for them in game one. Yes, they've had to change a few of the parts in getting that Tristana instead of the Kalista now, but they still have the option to make a very similar team comp all around.
And Unicorns are going similar when you look at the time of scaling from the mid lane. The Corki, of course, later game focused, a little bit more range to his damage, less all-in, but they also have a better engage tool out of this Sejuani in the jungle. We're asking for the jungler now from Pridestalker to see what he's got left. I want to see something like a Rengar, but
I want to see a Kayn. I want to see a Kayn!
That's Kayn being locked in. First game of Kayn. Now it could be top lane, could be jungle, because of course Jarvan has been played in the jungle recently as well. Jax, if they believe that Jarvan is going top lane, would be a good matchup for Vizicsacsi. You can play the Gnar into the Jarvan as well.
I expect it to be Kayn jungle. That's where we've tended to see him. However, I want to talk a lot about this Kayn when we get into the game.
Oh, me too.
I've heard stories of his strengths and of his weaknesses, and I'm sure we can break them down a little bit more. But tell me for now what these compositions are trying to do, Stress. What are their win conditions coming into this game?
Okay, so once again, Unicorn's looking for fighting a little bit earlier in the game than in game 1. They're not heavily reliant on the late game. They just have insurance from Exile's Corki when they get to the late game. Of course, Chachi's going to look to take over the side lane at the same kind of time with the Corki, same kind of playstyle, whereas Roccat, very similar to game 1, where you look at it, you've got team fight potential coming from the top lane, team fight setup coming from mid lane with the Syndra, the early game burst, and then Tristana and Thresh, great duo pairing to be able to take some of those early game skirmishes, and again, late game reliability later on from the Tristana. So very interesting rounded comps here, and of course, the wild card, the Shadow Reaper, out of the jungle for Pridestalker.
If you think Kayn is going to have a 100% win rate, make sure you go on Twitter at LOL Esports, hashtag ROC win. If you think it'll be a 100% loss rate, hashtag UOL win. They'll be looking to try and take us into game 3 of this series. Thus far, this split stress, Unicorns of Love have reverse swept 3 times. Let's see if they can make it number 4. We are going to get onto the Summoner's Rift, and Kayn is going to be played on 7-14. I'm hyped, you're hyped, we're all hyped at home. Let's get right on into the action.
Very hyped for Kayn coming out onto the Rift. So, let's start with the Kayn basics. Kayn is a champion that, based on whether you damage ranged or melee champions, changes form.
Okay.
They both do different things, and we'll track whichever one he ends up going for. You can see some of Kayn's abilities there in the bottom left of your screen. A little bit of crowd control, a lot of mobility. He can phase through walls and then trespass into an enemy champion for his ultimate to deal damage on the way out. So some really cool stuff on Kayn. We'll watch some of his early pathing, watch some of his unorthodox gank pathing as well, because being able to phase through walls is something no other champion can do.
Exactly, and it reminds me a lot of Xerxe when she first came out. People finding these really inventive paths to actually get ganks off, and you can use that shadow step, that phasing through walls, to be able to find these really inventive positions, and it makes your enemy team have to think a lot more about early game vision and where they're going to try and spot you out. It's a bit like Zac. You have to get those wards in difficult positions. Roccat are going to push forward in towards Xerxe. We'll find him at the Razor Beaks. Realize there's no Gnar in the bush and back themselves away. Just getting some ward control around that red buff.
So as we watch Pridestalker start his jungle, has started with the Q, which is to be expected. What we've seen in solo Q is you put a couple of points, maybe 3 points in Q, and then you just max W. We've also seen a couple of other junglers, the likes of Maxlaw and Jankos, have been checking out every day. They've been playing a couple of extra games of Kayn. A couple of the junglers just maxing W right away. So let's track that from Pridestalker. We're going to be tracking a lot of things on Kayn.
It's gone shadow steps, Zach.
Yes.
Gets you some health back, I guess, so you can use it like that.
Sustain, faster route around the jungle now onto the red buff.
He cut off such a big area of movement there, Stress. That's at least 3 steps for Kayn.
All right, sarcasm. New champion medic.
Oh, I'm excited.
We're looking through the early game. We're looking at what exactly he can do, because look, he's already off his red buff. He's already on the move.
Yep, slightly quicker clear than Xerxe, who's just finished those wolves. Once again, 3 steps. That's 6 steps. I'm going to count these. That's 6 steps across his jungle path thus far. That's at least 2 milliseconds or so that he has saved going with this shadow step second.
We'll nearly have saved as many steps as Xerxe did damage in the early game, and Sjokz is...
13 steps is all he needs by that 10-minute mark.
So that Blade's Reach that you see, the skill shot that comes out from him, of course that is going to put a slowdown. You're going to be able to deal some damage from it as well, and then utilize some of the mobility from his Q, the Reaping Slash. That's what's spinning him round. You dash forward and spin, and both parts do damage. So look, Pridestalker gets a lot of health back.
How many steps is he saving? Okay, so he comes out of the top. However, he could have just walked there. So I'm saying a maximum of 2 steps there. That's 8 steps across the course. Make sure you count with me, guys, at home. I want to see tallies on Twitter.
This is a little too... We're going too deep down the rabbit hole.
There's the Scuttlecraft for Pridestalker as well. He's going to look towards the mid lane for a gank, which is a smart path, as Exile tends to spend a lot of his laning phase pushed back by Betsy. Already down to 200 HP.
Exile so very low. Of course, Syndra will have the early game advantage in this exchange, and Exile going boots and potions will give him more health potions to sustain himself back up. But this bottom lane, we saw a lot of activity last game with the Xayah, the Rakan. Not so much this time, although a couple of trades attempted by the Unicorns there.
And a lot of the action was because we saw the junglers making so many plays down towards that bottom lane, so many plays up towards the top. Actually, a surprise, really, coming out from Pridestalker is how much more impactful he was in the early game and in the game as a whole than Xerxe. 3 times the damage per minute, so much more of his team's damage percentage as well. And yes, Xerxe was playing Cho'Gath as a tank, but he really wasn't having the impact he would have liked in these games.
And Xerxe could never get into the fights. That was the biggest problem. Unless a fight started around him, it was so difficult to get anything done, whereas Sejuani, on the plus side, has the ultimate to get a fight started themselves. Of course, that Glacial Prison, so good at long range to catch out a target.
And that's what we want to see from the Unicorns of Love. You've got a composition from Roccat that scales to some degree, but Kayn is known to fall off later game. Really doesn't have the impact in those late game teamfights that something like a Kha'Zix would have.
Now, that's an interesting one because a lot of people have differing opinions on this. We're speaking a little bit to Maxlore about the potential of late game for Kayn. He actually can carry late game quite hard. There's a decent amount of damage that comes through, and if you are in the red form in Rust, you get a lot of sustain and can take extended fights, but we don't know what to make of it in competitive yet. In scrims, in solo queue, the pace of the game is so much faster that a champion like Kayn that can be reliant on kills will snowball quicker into the game and have a better effect. That's one of the things that Hecarim had as a jungler, was in scrims, he'd pick up 10 kills, you'd walk around the map and kill anybody. Well, now we have to watch for Pridestalker on Kayn, first game on 7-14. He's already had the impact using that Shadow Step to get into the enemy jungle and take out a couple of camps.
That's a few steps. I'll give him like 5 steps there as well. It's good stuff, Pridestalker. Keep that step count high. I imagine him like a fitness tracker around his wrist.
He's got a Fitbit on.
It's just like, oh yeah, it's 1,000 calories I burnt walking through walls.
But would that go through the wall with him? You know, it's the old sci-fi adage,
well, his
right?
scythe does, so I guess that is a Darkin though.
But the scythe is possessed. I don't think you can ground the scythe in real physics of walls.
I don't think you can ground anything of League of Legends in real physics of walls. So
that's true.
I'm just saying. Anyway, Phaxi is going to just TP back up towards the top lane. Does have a CS disadvantage, as expected against this Gnar. It's about 20 farm behind.
Yeah. Flashbacks to, well, if the Doctor's a woman, anything can happen, which is a great thing as we get back into the action, the bottom lane. Because look, BF sword by, with Thresh, Tristana maybe will be able to get a lot of damage out in this laning phase, but you're against a Braum. You're against a Braum Kalista, and they're not even going to the lane that you stood in. So this is a little bit of an attempt to offset the push power by Samux and Hylissang going up to the top lane to push everything in, while the Roccat push in the bottom lane.
And something we see so commonly from the Unicorns of Love is this switch up towards the top side, the lane swap pretty early on, past that 5-minute mark, so you get the increased damage on towards the tower, but not as late as we see it from other teams. They don't even need to get bottom lane tower. They just accept that they're not winning those trades, and they move their way up towards top.
Speaking of winning trades, Betsy in the middle lane, 58 CS up to the 45 right now, taking full control of this middle lane against Exileh. Kind of want to watch Exileh because he made that awful blunder in the first game.
Knock up onto Hylissang. It was under the tower, but he hadn't actually procced anything onto Phaxi, so didn't take any damage. Pridestalker's on his way, but Xerxe's just around the corner.
He's warded, though, is the biggest thing here. Pridestalker has been warded out, so even with Shadow Step being able to close the distance very quickly, they're able to get through.
Pridestalker gonna look for the damage, but Xerxe turns it back around with the permafrost. There's the heal you get from the Shadow Step, and Xerxe's winning these trades between the two junglers for the time being.
Bottom lane trade, however, is going very heavily in favor of Roccat, and that's why Unicorns want to start a fight up on the top side.
They're TPing in with Mega Gnar. Phaxi's gone on towards Hjarnan. Pridestalker's going to chase it as well, but Hylissang flashes in. There's the exhaust. Unicorns of Love, 4 men deep, just looking for Phaxi up towards the top side. He will be sacrificed. And Unicorns of Love will get the fare from the Phaxi taxi and look for the top lane tower as well.
Unicorns able now to push through. It still looks like bot tower is going to go in favor of Roccat first at the cost of Phaxi's life. Similar trade to what we had in game number 1, and we were talking about how the Unicorns are generally happy to trade a kill away for getting that tower or first blood. This time it's Roccat that are getting the tower. And the Unicorns can't even get this on that first minion wave, so now they have to change around and push back through. Unicorns will inevitably end up getting this, but look, Hjarnan recalls out. and looks for the top side.
That's the thing as well. Kalista isn't great at tower pushing, so you can take your AD carry out of the situation. Probably try and give all of this gold to Vizicsacsi to try and keep him rolling on this Gnar. They want him to be big and tanky when he joins team fights. He's on his way to the back cleaver already. Yeah,
and this is the thing, is that they knew Xerxe was around. Pridestalker had been there for some vision, and the teleport comes out early. Phaxi and Pridestalker split direction here to try and just close, or try and delay Unicorns as much as possible. Pridestalker stays in the rest of the fight, and Phaxi commits overly into the fight at first. Unicorns of Love able to pick up that first kill.
And they'll be very happy with that. Their early game has been weak over the last few weeks. One of the teams that really struggles to get these first towers, to get these first bloods. They pick up first blood, they get a tower just a little bit after Roccat, so that gold is still pretty even between the two. Now that we're entering into the mid-game stress, what are the intentions for these teams? Because I see there's an Infernal Drake there, and I think they've got to want to fight. They've got to want to go for this early to late-game dragon.
Yeah, they want some... you want to look at a skirmish and who would effectively take a skirmish at this point in the game. The Syndra is always going to be very powerful. Now, we don't necessarily know the power of Kayn. We've heard things about his early game skirmishing, and Roccat may not commit to it without knowing the full strength. Remember, Kayn, of course, is the first competitive game that we're seeing of Kayn here in Europe. First time it's been available, really, in Europe.
But it's only the second game in which it's been available. Really. I think perhaps Roccat are saying we'll experiment a little bit as well. We've got a one-game lead. Yes, if we lose it, of course, that's a dismaying fact, but we still have one game after that to try and beat the Unicorns. So we can let Pridestalker pick up one of these champions that suits the style he's known for. He's known for these assassins who can get onto the backline. Glacial Prism is going to hit Wadid. Hjarnan trying to get his way away. He will just jump across the wall and knock back Samux, but they're going to chase in. Here comes Xerxe, here comes the fake call, and here come the Unicorns. Double kill to Samux.
Yeah, Hjarnan couldn't get out far enough in time. Unicorns, look at how much more comfortable they look utilizing this Sejuani. Xerxe is able to get the fight started down on the bottom side. Doesn't even matter what else happens, because as soon as Xerxe hits that Glacial Prism, suddenly Unicorns are in full control, and now it transitions into the Dragon. We talked about how Roccat would be good at skirmishing around the Syndra. Well, if the Syndra isn't there, Roccat can't really take the fight.
Pridestalker with a very early shadow step will realize he's not going to be able to steal this one away from a Kalista and from a Sejuani. Infernal Drake goes across towards the Unicorns of Love. The next dragon will be a Cloud, perhaps slightly less hotly contested.
Yeah, although I think here in Berlin we're all praying for a few Clouds to take the heat off here. But look, real icy reception that Wadid gets on the bottom lane, easily taken down as Samux and the rest of the Unicorns then move their attention to Hylissang, onto Hjarnan. Pridestalker not close enough to get into that fight. Of course, we're waiting for that first Umbral Trespass, the ultimate that comes through from Pridestalker, but we haven't really seen him being involved in fights, and without that, it's going to take a while to transform.
Hylissang trying to trade onto Betsy, but Betsy says, excuse me, I have this button on my keyboard. It says R. Do you really want to try and trade into me? They have to use the exhaust to keep their support alive.
And as we're getting closer to the point in the game where we're expecting Kayn to start transforming, the way it works is when you hit a ranged champion or a melee champion, it drops these little like bloblets to the floor, and they automatically pick up when you're out of combat. So it's the kind of thing, all you got to do is hit champions, everything is kind of stacks up and transform, flash in the mid lane.
The hook comes in as well, and an Exile once again is caught out. Pridestalker with our first Kayn kill of patch 7.14. He's showing how able he is on Kayn to make these murders happen. Now they're looking for the tower as well. Umbral Trespass is used, Stress. Xerxe gets away. That was less exciting than it could have been.
That was a lot less exciting, and of course you can choose when to get back out of the enemy champion with that Umbral Trespass, but first kill for Roccat. This time, I mean, Exile's sticking around a little bit late, but at least he was under his own tower this time for the Unicorns of Love. The look you're giving me, hey, I'm trying to find silver linings here.
He died, but at least he was standing under a tower that was about to fall.
Well, we were talking about this in between Game 1 and Game 2, and you know, Exileh spends so much of his time being close to his enemy tower, being past the halfway point on the map, and at least this time Exileh, while playing from behind, isn't suicidal at the same time.
It's true, it's true. He learned not to push too far into a Syndra last week, and this week has been playing a lot safer. Actually, averages
he did it
about...
in Game 1.
That's true, but not as a Corki, as a Corki.
That's fair.
Spends about 30% of his laning phase past that mid lane. Doesn't really respect the jungle positioning a lot of the time. We saw it pay dividends for Roccat last game as they brought Wadid into that mid lane. But now Unicorns of Love are trying to set up a vision line in this river. There is a Rift Herald available for them as well if they want to try and take it.
Pridestalker gets a little bit of extra damage down on Xerxe now, and of course that'll get him a little closer to that transformation. Still waiting with bated breath about that, but we got to look at the difference in jungle between Game 1 and Game 2, because Pridestalker was a lot more active on the map. It seemed like he knew the limits of a Kha'Zix way better than a Kayn. And of course, Kayn is a new champion, difficult to be able to know exactly how much he can do, but hasn't been fast-paced on the Roccat side of things now as we go to a Rift Herald, likely to be a skirmish. And Xerxe's ultimate is not ready yet.
Xerxe doesn't have teleport, and already Phaxi is here. Roccat looking for it. They do manage to secure it. There's the Glacial Fissure. Xerxe's going to jump in as well. The stun puts Samux on a rampage, and the Unicorns of Love are looking to clean up. Hylissang dead, but Samux gets rid of the Tristana as well. Can he retreat from Roccat? Yes, he can. The kiting is superb. Roccat are going to get ace around this Rift Herald, and they get nothing for it.
Nothing from the Rift Herald fight, just one kill onto Hylissang, but Unicorns get the full ace, deny the pickup of the Rift Herald buff, and now Unicorns are in full control. Samux has had a great game already. 5 kills on this Kalista is just such an enormous lead for Unicorns to play these early skirmishes. It doesn't matter that the mid lane didn't go in their favor as Exileh dropped down. They have enough team fighting strength to be able to take back-to-back fights now against the Roccat lineup.
Last time Samux played Kalista, he got 1 kill. So he's already quintupled that for this game, and we're only 15 minutes in. A 3,000 gold lead for Unicorns of Love as well at the 15-minute mark is totally averse to their usual early gameplay.
And as Roccat go aggressive onto the Rift Herald, you see it's just an easy fight. Roccat had overcommitted at this point, and Samux is able to hop his way out of the Cataclysm through the back of the fight, just pick up kill after kill, and actually holds now the record for the most kills of 15 minutes for an AD carry now, does Samux with the 5 kills on this Kalista. He's been involved in every kill so far with those 3 assists on top of it, and itemization-wise, he is just accelerated so far ahead of Hjarnan.
Yeah, already finished the Blade of the Ruin King, has the Zeal in his back pocket as well. They're going to get Tower down in the bottom lane. They've broken that first turret line, and it is looking superb for Unicorns of Love. Roccat haven't been able to make this Kayn pick work yet. I think at all. I'm going to say yet.
Yet and at all is fair, because look, Sejuani, even from behind, Sejuani can have a lot of impact, but you want Kayn to output damage. You want him to be able to last through a fight, and look, it's not going to happen right now because in the Unicorns go to fight again.
There's 2 people top lane here for Roccat as the Unicorns just wipe Phaxi off the face of the map. Roccat are looking for top lane tower. They're trying to make a trade, but it's not going in their favor. They lose a kill, they lose a tower, and Gnar's going to jump in at the top as well. Sjokz looking for the 2v1 outplay. Hjarnan jumps away. Sjokz does not have flash, but he's got a building to chuck towards the Tristana. Hjarnan realizes you cannot fight Sjokz when he's feeling on form.
At this point, Roccat have completely fallen apart from what we saw in Game 1. They weren't able to establish a significant gold lead early on, and the Unicorns have established an astronomical lead in the bottom lane right now. This Kalista is basically not going to get stopped, and it doesn't help when Hjarnan and Wadid commit onto the top side and just show themselves in full vision, looking for that tower, as if the Unicorns aren't strong enough to just push down on the bottom side of the map.
Pridestalker still not transformed into either the Shadow Assassin or the Darkin yet. It's a long, long wait for him. And something we talked about in Game 1, Stress, was about how Xerxe is growing and developing as part of this team. Last week we saw him play Elise. This week we wanted to see him play these tanks that are in meta that can have a huge impact in the game. On Sejuani in this game, he has been on point time and time again. Great stun combos with Hylissang, great engages, great glacial prisms as well.
I have a feeling.
Here we go.
Observers, maybe they're baiting me.
Oh, screw you, observers.
Baited
I was so excited.
We were getting the first transformation, but it was partly because he was backing away to pick up some itemization, heading towards a Black Cleaver. And the reason the transformation is so important...
I'm still angry at the observers, Stress.
I know, I am too. The reason it's so important is because of the way the transformation augments your abilities. Now, if you choose to let Rust consume after, of course, hitting melee champions a whole lot, you're able then to get a lot more sustain on your abilities. On every spell cast, you'll get health back, and on the ultimate. That's a key one. You get a lot of sustain coming from the ult, but it just hasn't happened yet for Roccat. They still trying to fight, but Xerxe is tanky enough to just absorb that.
That was Hjarnan free attacking for about 3 or 4 seconds, was only able to get about half of Xerxe's health down. And here we will see Unicorns of Love jumping in. The Fate's Call comes out. That's a catch onto Hjarnan. He's knocked up. He's stunned up. And Unicorns of Love will get their 11th kill of the game.
And it's just going to keep on going for the Unicorns. They're able to push forward and forward. Now, I wonder whether the observers know that Rust is...
There we go.
Here we go.
That's so sweet. And it's the Darkin. Yeah, it's Rust.
Has appeared on the Rift. Now, of course, he gets extra sustain and % damage, but is it enough to save it?
Looking for the fight. The knockup does come out, and now they're looking for the engage onto the backline. He's so low, but the Umbral Trespass comes out onto Samux. He'll gain some health back from this. Will flash, but Exile's on a killing spree, and Unicorns of Love are not done yet. They're looking for Betsy. They're looking for Phaxi. They're looking for the end of this game. Betsy doing work, but cannot quite get the kills, and Unicorns of Love will get the inhibitor before 20 minutes.
Yeah, Unicorns of Love with a dominant performance in Game 2 here, shutting Rust out before having any real impact on the fight. And Unicorns now going to back away, reset. They will look for this Baron almost undoubtedly, because look, they've got the Kalista, they've got significant damage, and they've already got the inhibitor down in the top lane.
Let's have another look at this fight. Stress all starts as Unicorns look for this inhibitor tower.
Yeah, and they commit to the tower first of all, and yes, the first kill goes their way, and it looks good because Pridestalker goes in. He's able to get damage down, but he's so far behind and not tanky enough to be able to get further damage after the Umbral Trespass that Unicorns of Love just march right through the rest of this team fight and take down that inhibitor.
This is the highest gold lead that the Unicorns of Love have had at 20 minutes through the entire split. About 7,000 ahead. They average 260. That is a big disparity between the two. And Roccat, you can see the difference between these two teams. Roccat were not this far ahead when they were trying to snowball.
You can see in the bottom left of your screen some of the additional benefits of being Rust. Of course, the extra sustain that we talked about. The knock-up on Blade's Reach as well is a nice addition. One of those augmented abilities. But look, Pridestalker, look at how squishy he still is. Like, this is the bruiser form.
Doesn't have the Black Cleaver yet.
He doesn't even have a second item. This game might end without him getting a second item.
Well, Phaxi's going to try and get his way away from this fight. Jumps back with the Cataclysm, but Samux is now godlike on this Kalista, and Roccat just turned from ferocious lions into meek cats. Meek domestic cats, Stress. Like the sort of cat you would find at a cat cafe or in your house. Purring, meowing, but unable to actually fight up against a worthy foe like a Unicorn. They're going for the Baron. Roccat are going to try and distract them. Betsy there, but the Baron goes down, and Unicorns of Love are actually going for the engage. Pridestalker gets the knocker, but here comes Gnar. There's the Lantern out. Saved more steps there than he did in his early jungle pathing.
Oh, obsessed with fitness, Medic. Obsessed. You'll fit into this team perfectly on the EU broadcast crew. But at this point, we have to look at what hasn't necessarily fit in perfectly, and it is not the pick itself. The Kayn pick is not the reason why Roccat are losing this game, but it is a lackluster first game for Kayn. We were expecting something that maybe could snowball quite heavily, take control of fights with the ability to sustain himself up, but they've never got into the game. The bottom lane fights, the first 2 or 3 that happened in favor of Unicorns, have dictated the pace of this game far more than anything Roccat has done.
Unicorns looking for the fight. Actually, as Xerxe gets jumped on by Pridestalker and Phaxi. Xerxe has the Umbral Trespass. That's going to do a lot of damage. Great Gnar, great flash. Here comes the Shadow Step. There's a fight in the mid lane, though, as we do see Hjarnan fall to Unicorns of Love. They can get the inhibitor tower. Gnar fell. Xerxe died, but they will sacrifice him for the Glacial Prison straight onto the face of Betsy. This has to be the game for the Unicorns of Love. Only 3 members of Roccat left to defend.
And I don't think Roccat are going to be able to take any kind of fight here. Unicorns of Love, they're past the point where Corki is now fine. They got a 9-0-6 Kalista, and they want to end this game.
Gonna jump onto Phaxi. The airborne does come out, the knockup from Kayn, but they just want the Nexus Towers. Unicorns of Love are gonna strike back. They will equalize the series. It will be 1-1, and they're looking for the reverse sweep once again.
Look at the difference for the Unicorns when they have activity out of their jungler when it comes to starting fights. They have the ability to just throw out the Glacial Prison, get a fight started, continue with the damage, and they're able to just keep moving through these fights. And it's the big difference between the Cho'Gath and the Sejuani, is Cho needed to walk up to get a fight started. Sejuani just throws the bolus from a million miles away and just says, okay, Samux, you get the kills.
Exactly. Like, if you can get Samux ahead, he has been one of the few consistent performers for Unicorns of Love. Chachi last week had a few off games where he was getting a lot of isolated deaths, actually second in the league for isolated deaths, only beaten by Phaxi, who's on the Roccat lineup. Exileh has had a bad split all round, but is slowly showing us that he can adapt and change. Samux is the one. Samux is that stalwart presence for Unicorns of Love that if you get him ahead, you know you're going to have a good time.
Happy to see the draft priority changes to the Kalista as well, while the Caitlyn had been banned away. And then Roccat, I don't think they had a particularly bad draft, just early game. Falls away from them, and then the Unicorns, if they get ahead with a skirmishing team composition, they're going to be very good at closing that game out. They typically have very short wins with compositions like this. And Roccat just didn't really know how to deny the team fights.
I love the ease of execution for the Unicorns comp as well. It's like, okay, Braum presses R, and then Sejuani presses R, and then we win the game. Easy peasy lemon.
And Samux just hops around a little bit, gets the fight.
He can auto attack, just like right click on someone and let it happen, and then you win the fight anyway.
Yeah, I mean that's how you could play Kalista, I guess.
Yeah, it can definitely work for them. The Unicorns of Love stayed in the series with a win in game 2. Let's check in with the analyst desk for more on that equalizer.
Thank you very much. Well, there is not that much to talk about because Samuel Fernandez, aka Samux, and that's how the Twitter of Unicorns of Love always shout his name when he does things like this, but he absolutely went off on Kalista. Only the 3rd time he has went for her in the summer split, and he just pressed the advantage completely to the end for them. Let's take a look at some highlight plays because if you get a couple of kills on Kalista, that's already very good. And this is Kayn. So yeah, there we go. Well, obviously, we can then just start by talking about Kayn. So how did you guys think he influenced the game from Roccat?
So just to tie in back a little bit with your original point, like, because they tie in nicely together, right? Because the thing about Samux and how well he played this game was very much about how well they were able to get an early lead. And the thing about Kayn is you need to be able to snowball. That having chatted with Xerxe, he's like, the thing about Kayn is you always want to be invading. You want to be stealing away camps. His jungle clear is really effective, really, really powerful. And so if you're not stealing things away and you're not trying to force a bunch of plays in the early game, then you're just going to get straight up outscaled. And that is very much what happened, largely because of what Samux was able to do in the early game. He got that first blood on the top side of the map. Once they had that early lead, they utilized the early power of Kalista and they just kept the pressure going. And Roccat could never really find a successful opportunity to bring the Kayn back into the game.
Well, a world of difference with game 1, and Xerxe's influence was much of the same. We didn't saw much of his Cho'Gath in game 1. Why do you think on the Sejuani and with this team comp, he was able to make so much more happen for UOL?
I think when he's going for these sort of tank junglers, like, he's so reliant on his laners. When Exileh in the mid lane falls so far behind in game number 1, he can't really do much on his Cho'Gath, which is why he plays so passively. This time in game 2, though, he had a lot more opportunities to make things happen. He farmed up to quick level 6 on the Sejuani and then just went for it over and over for the aggressive plays. It did a really good job to facilitate his team, but of course it was Samux who was the big carry set up by Xerxe.
He was. We are, I think, now going to take a look at some of the highlights from Samux in this game. And if we look at both compositions, if you look at Unicorns of Love and what they had, how beneficial is it for a comp like that to snowball, and how hard is it for a comp like Roccat to keep the snowball from going? What tools do they have to fight back versus a fed UOL?
I mean, that's one of the issues, right? Like, they actually don't have that many tools because the UOL composition is actually just really good at team fighting. And one of the things for Samux was the way in which he just had such a great team fight composition to play around. His positioning was always fantastic, and this was one of the very big early game windows that allowed Samux to start snowballing, getting this kill down onto Phaxi. The fact that Xerxe was able to contribute to the gold as well meant that they had the tools in their kit to just keep pushing, start snowballing all around the map, and a fed Kalista in the early game just becomes very difficult to slow down. So I was very impressed with the way in which UOL were able to press this early advantage, and it just ties back into also what we wanted to see from Xerxe and what he himself said. I feel like it's difficult to make things happen in the early game when I do not have winning lanes. This time around, he had the winning lanes and he utilized them properly.
So when it comes to UOL, obviously it looks like a coin flip when Exileh is going to do well in lane or not. Kind of how big of an issue is that? Because it seems like a lot of that is not particularly Xerxe's, fault, even if he has the right pick.
Yeah, have been inconsistent. I like going for these sort of safer laners with a Corki. You can just hug your tower, wave clear, it's going to be fine. You get your power spikes with a Triforce when you have 3 completed items, so you don't have to go aggressive in the same way as you kind of have to with the Vladimir and take the risks. So I think just putting Exileh on these sort of safe champions that don't have to take the big risks would be a good plan for the Unicorns.
We keep saying that, but then he goes under turret.
Yes, yes, he does. That's one of the issues that they have pretty consistently had. So I feel like for the time being, though, he's doing fine. I love the fact that the other side laners are stepping up. Chachi died significantly less this time around. He had a really successful matchup in the Gnar versus and the Jarvan. But I do want to backtrack a little bit to this Kayn pick in particular and where it fits in the composition, because what you can see is they wanted to get Pridestalker on an early game jungler. And as we talked about earlier, what you want to do on Kayn is snowball. However, something that was mentioned a lot in the cast was that you get passive stacks based on the type of champion that you hit, whether it be ranged or melee. If you look at the draft, you have Gnar, range champion, Kalista, range champion, Corki, range champion. You really don't have that many options to stack Rust. So even though 17 minutes into the game, he had been hitting all these champions and he was ready to go, he has to wait another 3 minutes because Shadowhunter's not what he wants. He literally got countered because of the comp that he had to play against. And it's one of those small things that just comes with time and experience, where you just have to figure out when is the best time to be picking Kayn.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you
I mean, I don't think it was a great pick into the comp of Unicorns of Love, and I don't think it was a great pick with the comp of Roccat either, because you have the big late game damage dealers in Syndra and the Tristana, so you just really want a safe frontline that can keep them safe, and that's not what Kayn is going to be doing at all. So not too sure on the pick with the team comp of Roccat and against the team comp of UOL.
Yeah, the Cho'Gath and the Kayn we've seen today have not been able to exert too much pressure, but I still hope they try and pull out the things that they're comfortable on, because it's very interesting for us. We'll see. But in any case, Unicorns of Love and Roccat, they have one last chance to take the series. We'll be right back for the decider.
I want to see a Kayn. I want to see a Kayn!
That's Kayn being locked in. First game of Kayn.
Hjarnan trying to get his way away. He will just jump across the wall and knock back Samux, but they're going to chase in. Here comes Xerxe, here comes the fake call, and here come the Unicorns. Double kill. Hylissang dead, but Samux gets rid of the Tristana as well. Can he retreat from Roccat? Yes, he can. The kiting is superb. Roccat are going to get ace around this Rift Herald. Get the inhibitor tower. Gnar fell. Chachi died, but they will sacrifice him for the glacial prison straight onto the face of Betsy.
Oh, you got him actually. I didn't know.
Unicorns of Love are going to strike back. They will equalize the series. It will be 1-1, and they're looking for the reverse sweep once again.